Shalom. Shalom. This is Extinction Protocols, preparing for transition. It is a series of messages addressed to those who would be true olive trees, true Yasharal, commonly known as Israel, and the golden lampstands, who we will come to realize represents the multitude mentioned in Revelation's 7th chapter. It is to those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, Yahuwah, and accept that it is Yahusha as our Messiah and Mashiach, that it is through him that we receive life, and life immeasurably. It is through Yahusha our Messiah that we are restored into fellowship with the Almighty Father. This message is to you, of whom I consider my brothers and my sisters. Today is May 14, 2014. If you're tuning in for the first time, my name is Symmanayah. This segment of Extinction Protocol, this is part two of the segment entitled Perception, Listening, Knowing, Believing. So if you're tuning into this segment, Perceptions, Listening, Knowing, Believing, I strongly encourage you and invite you to listen to part one and consider listening to these messages in sequence. With that said, if you're returning, I salute your patience, your endurance, your tolerance. I salute you, my brothers and sisters. Continuing on, we are consuming much time and effort disputing when a day begins and ends in order to guard the Shabbat, the seventh day of rest. We spend much time debating and arguing with one another versus committing it to prayer and seeking the living voice of the Spirit of Yahushua so that we are able to discern what is right regarding the seventh day of rest. There is also much division among us regarding whether or not we should be honoring the feast days while in captivity, or what is known as the Moedim, the appointed times. And let us not forget another conflict between us relates to defining the new moon. My brothers and sisters, while many of us expense energy, time, and focus on debating, arguing, promoting various positions on this matter, I have yet to meet anyone who has sought the Most High Father Yahuwah through the Spirit of Yahushua to consider the purpose of each of these appointed times. For some reason, we have ignored the degree of which the flesh war against the spirit and embrace these set-apart times as more focused on our physical desires, coming together physically, talking physically, eating and fellowship, with lack of understanding of purpose to the message behind each of these appointed times. My brothers and sisters, soon, and very soon, we will learn and discover when these times should be honored, guarded, and acknowledged. We will come into unity, those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father regarding these points in time. Case in point, did you know that the purpose of Shabbat mainly is for us to come away from the many distractions of work and servitude, and to focus intensely on the voice of the Spirit of Yahushua teaching us and nurturing us? Did you know it is a time to study and fellowship and pray and look at one another to determine, to discern, and acknowledge the Spirit of Yahushua working in us one towards another, in or directly through his chosen teachers, leaders, and prophets? Are you aware that Shabbat is a time to come away from distractions and direct our attention on the Most High? No, while many people worry about eating and hurrying up home to prepare on an erroneous time, many are just void of the true purpose of Shabbat. Are you aware that the feast times, the 7 feasts, that embedded within the 7 feasts is a blueprint towards maturity? Consider these words, my brothers and sisters. The Passover, while many people talk about what foods to eat with each of the feasts and coming together in fellowship and celebrating these feasts, I submit to you, while you focus on eating or how you would dress and where you would come together, and just ignore what is the purpose of these feasts, I submit to you, you are missing something most important that will feed the spirit of a man, that will feed the spirit towards maturity and worship and obedience. Consider Passover. If we look at Passover during the time of Moshe, or as we look at Yahushua, our ultimate Passover, we will see that it represents a time of choosing living instructions that are provided for us to live, for us to survive, for us to be a part of life and life immeasurably, and being obedient, or face death. Bottom line, he who ignores the Passover lamb will face death regrettably. Unleavened bread. How many realize that there's a purpose? There's a time. It is a time of knowing the importance of righteous influence versus wicked attacks and wicked distractions. Yes, the whole discipline and spirit and teaching behind unleavened bread is to know the difference between righteous influence versus wicked attacks and diversions and distractions. First fruits. It is a time to be mindful that some will learn and obey quicker than others. It is a time for us to identify and discern how maturity comes quicker from some than others, even in our plants, even in our livestock, even in the foods we eat. It is a time to press forward in obedience and worship with patience, knowing that others will catch on, others will reach maturity as well. It is a time for us to know that we should be straightly looking at the Most High and following Him and responding to Him. Harvest, the Feast of Harvest. It is a time when many will come to hear the voice of the Spirit of Yahushua, and it will make for a more unified gathering. In other words, we had those who caught on quicker than others, but now we see the numbers growing where we all are at that point at a certain point of maturity where we can unilaterally speak of the reign of Yahushua, where we can come together as a unified bunch and proclaim the reign of Yahushua, our Messiah. It is a time when our communications will be easier with less confrontation because more people will come to discern and understand what must be done. The Feast of Trumpet. It is a time we can begin to proclaim the reign of Yahushua, our Messiah, our Mashiach, as a mature, unified bunch, as mature individuals, contributing to a unifying body with balance. It is a time to echo out and sound out the good news of our Messiah Yahushua. The Feast of Atonement. It is a time to realize we will make mistakes along our journey, but the blood of the Lamb is very much active, along with the Almighty Father Yahuwah, who sent His set-apart Spirit in Yahushua's name, regenerating us, cleansing us, making our robes white, washing us. Notice how this feast followed the other feasts when it came to purpose. Notice how Passover was instructions, live or die, unleavened bread, know the difference between important righteousness versus wicked attacks, knowing that some will get it before others, knowing that others will join in, knowing that there will come a time to sound and speak out, and knowing that if we make a mistake, the blood of the Lamb empowers us to get up, repent, and press forward and continue to seek to obey and worship Him. And then we come to the seventh feast, Tabernacle. Here's one where if we examine it closely, we can discover the reinforcement of our physical and spiritual makeup. We can see clearly that within these earthen vessels lies a spirit. To those of us who desire to do the will of the Almighty Father and Yahuwah and accept Yahushua as Messiah, we know a time will come when these earthen vessels will become extinct. Scriptures inform us of a time when these corruptible bodies were put on incorruptible form. Tabernacle, a time of identifying individually and a time of identifying how this body of one with many members will come together as one body, as one tabernacle, guided, used, and representative of the bride of our Messiah, Yahushua. My brothers, again, I tell you, if we truly examine the purpose of these set apart times, we will come to know that there are things that feed our spirit that are true to our spirit and towards our maturity in worship and obedience. And if we examine the purpose of the full moon, it was for providing a time of extended daylight during conditions and times of harvest, by lighting up the night sky in order to provide times for extended day where we were able to harvest our crops. What many fail to realize is that each month there was a different crop coming into harvest, coming into maturity, coming into harvest time. And the new moon is indeed a full moon. In due season, proof will come with power and confirmation from the Most High Father. For those who are unable to receive these words, at least those who will be among the ranks of the children of obedience will come to witness proof regarding these matters. My brothers and sisters, if you examine and yield to the voice of the Spirit of Yahushua, you just might come to receive that the purposes of each of these times rest with their contributions to our growing into maturity and understanding life from a natural and spiritual perspective. You will come to know that it is more to these appointed times that feeds our spirit than it is with satisfying our flesh with physical meat and bread. Humbling times will come, and they will produce clear vision and open ears to hear what the Spirit of Yahushua is saying to us individually and to its assembly. This concludes part 2, my brothers and sisters, part 2. For I know that each of us have different perceptions. We are listening. Some are coming to the point where we believe we have reached the point where we're walking a path of knowing and believing. But as we are refined and reproved, there will be correction in each of these categories: perception, listening, knowing, and believing. Stay tuned, my brothers and sisters, for this concludes part 2. We will pick up with part 3 in a moment. Shalom, shalom, shalom.